Thanks for tuning in and watching this video. My name is Ben. I'm one of the program managers at the Conflict Resolution Center in Montgomery County, and I'm very excited that I have April Shepard with me here today. She is the CEO of Priceless Purpose Publishing and the author of I Am Phenomenal Because I Am Me, a book on bullying and self-esteem. We're really excited that we have April joining us for this episode of Workshop Wednesday, and I hope this conversation will teach you a lot. And, I think it's a really important conversation to have. And so without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce April herself.
Hi, Ben. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. As you mentioned, I am the CEO of Priceless Purpose Publishing, and I'm also a publishing pioneer. And what that means is I help aspiring children's book authors to transition from aspiring to published without the headache and guesswork of navigating the children's book process alone. So I'm definitely looking forward to our conversation today. It's a conversation that deeply needs to be had, and I am looking forward to it. Thank you again for having me.
So April, what inspired you to write this book?
Actually, a few things. One being incidences with my own daughter, where she was experiencing quite a few bullying scenarios and incidences at her school. So, the natural feel in you as a parent, you want to go find the kid, drop to your knees and square up on him, right? But that would not be appropriate. So I didn't do that. But recognizing that she had so many emotions and feelings as a result of those different incidences that really affected how she felt about herself, and then just her value that she felt that she had as a person based on someone else's behavior, it made me more aware of the very real reality of child suicide. And I'm like, my daughter, thank God she's not suicidal, but at the same time, it made me understand how this happens, because sometimes it can genuinely go unnoticed and unaddressed. And that's one of the major things that inspired me to do this book, is the fact that, not only did my own daughter go through some of this bullying and some of these self-esteem struggles, but there's so many kids who are still in that dark place, and we may not even recognize that as parents. And I wanted to do something that will bridge the gap in diversity and inclusion, so that we can actually see ourselves in the characters, and our kids can see ourselves in the characters, to be able to identify those feelings and communicate about them, so that they can find healthy ways to deal with it. Because that's the main thing. If we don't know it's happening and we don't facilitate those conversations, we can't fix what's broken. So that's what really inspired me to get that done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just want to also I want to second what you said about how important it is that kids learn to identify their own feelings and their own values, but also the feelings and values of the people around them. And that's one of the key things that we talk about, and we train our mediators to do at our center. A huge part of mediation is to be able to, as a mediator, reflect back to the participants what they're saying and what they're feeling. So being able to identify those feelings and those values is a huge part of being good at conflict resolution. So I guess that'll sort of lead me into my second question for you is, when do you think children should start learning about conflict resolution, and how do you think that helps them deal with things like bullying and their self-esteem?
They should definitely start learning about that immediately. And when I mean immediately, I'm talking as soon as they even recognize the English language, because the fact of the matter is they are going to have conflicts even as toddlers. They're going to want to share a toy that may not belong to them. They're going to have all of these different perspectives and scenarios in which they're going to have to learn to shift and move in these situations where there may be some disagreement. And if we don't introduce it to them early enough, it doesn't become a regular part of what their routine looks like and how they respond in those situations. So the earlier, the better, honestly. Like, it's not something that, oh, well, once they're 5 and then they're in kindergarten and now they're in a school full of kids. It should happen immediately. It's very important. It's a life skill, not just for the sake of a school environment. It's a life skill for any environment, work, business, school, anywhere you go. You're going to need to be able to resolve that conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. What other life skills do you think are important for kids to have, or very early on, in terms of getting them ready and able to deal with hard hitting issues as they grow up?
Definitely communication, understanding that everything that's hard to talk about isn't something you should avoid talking about. Because one thing about it with most children, if they understand that there's an open door for the conversation, they'll usually bring it to you, right? So I feel like the earlier they learn that communication is important, they may not even know what to call what they're feeling at the time, but they need to say, you know what, I don't feel right. I feel sad, or I feel mad, or I feel angry. They need to know that there's an open door for that communication so that when it needs to happen, that it happens before something tragic actually happens to them.
Mhm. Yeah, and I could not agree more. I know in my personal experience, I've worked with a lot of kids in middle schools and high schools, as well as older populations. I've worked in some correctional facilities doing workshops, conflict management workshops for inmates, and so I've worked with a large range of ages. And something I've found that was troubling to me is I don't think we do enough to teach people when they're young about how to deal with conflict and how to deal with, people who are mean to you and don't like you and are saying nasty things about you, right? And that's something um, that really came over me when I was working in the correctional facilities with inmates, and I hear all the time about how, you know I would give them a pretty basic conflict management workshop, teaching them very basic conflict theory and conflict skills. And I got a lot of feedback of, wow, no one's ever talked about conflict like that before. They've never talked about conflict in a way that could be um, healthy, right? They've never heard the idea that conflict is something that can be healthy for them. Um, so I think it's so important that we reach kids as young as possible to start, giving them this information and giving them the tools that will help them succeed when they're going through, um, things that as serious as bullying.
Right. I completely agree. And definitely, I commend what you guys do over at your center, because the fact of the matter is the fact that you guys actually provide those type of services for free in regards to mediation and facilitating those conversations, it gives parents and it gives teachers and it gives the community those resources that they may not be aware that they exist. They may feel like these are hard grounds to walk on, right? But you don't have to walk on them by yourself. And that's the beautiful thing about your center and so many like it, is that many parents try to figure this out on their own and they don't really have to. But if more knew that, I could go to the conflict resolution center of Montgomery County to get that support, I could still have these conversations. They could help me to learn how to facilitate it in my own home. So it's not something that there's a stigma about, but it's something that's more standardized in what our everyday looks like. It's really important to start it that way, because if we don't start it from home, I mean, honestly, we go out into the world and we're all in the same spaces, untrained to deal with the conflict that inevitably is going to arise just by living life. So it's definitely a phenomenal thing that you guys are doing. And I'm grateful that you guys are doing what you do.
Mhm. Yeah, well, thank you. Okay, so I want to jump back to your book for a second. What kinds of ideas and theories do you talk about in your book that help kids learn about their self-esteem and how to deal with bullying?
So, a lot of what the book talks about, for example, there's a line that says, some people are miserable and very unhappy. Some people may call your natural coils nappy. No matter what those people say, your hair is your powerful crown. You're blessed to wear every day. There's going to be times in a child's life where there are going to be things about themselves that it's just who they are. And other people are going to find something wrong with it. But it doesn't mean that their brokenness defines what your value looks like. And that was one of my main points in doing this book, is that, you know what, you're going to have all of these different things that may happen to you, but understand it never will define how important or how valuable you are in this world. No one else defines that for you. And then there's another line that says, some people laugh and say mean things. Some people try to fight and tease, right? So there's a lot of different ways in which I introduce a different scenario in ways that you may experience other children. But in spite of those things, here is where your value lies, right? So the major point of my book is to say, hey, you can't avoid these situations sometimes. There are going to be incidences that aren't so friendly, and it may not even be because of something that's happening in you. It may be something happening in that bully. It may be something happening in their home, but it doesn't define who you are, how you are, or your value. And I just wanted to nail that point home, that, you know what, these incidences will never define you, and you are always valuable just specifically because you're you.
Mhm. Well, that's, I mean, that's beautiful. You know, I want to say I love what you're doing, and I love that you've written this book and that you're putting it out there to help kids. And I just want to ask, you know, what other efforts you're a part of, and how can parents, teachers, therapists, and anyone who might be watching this video be a part of them?
Well, definitely. One major thing is my campaign for keeping kids safe from suicide. And SAFE is an acronym for Stopping Adolescents from Feeling Expendable. With that, I'm making it a point with my own personal projects to make sure that I bridge that gap in diversity and inclusion when it comes to mental health, and making sure that Black, Brown, and multicultural kids can see themselves in the story when it comes to these different scenarios that they may not always be reflected in. So that's a major piece of it, is that, you know what, there is a gap in these resources. And instead of me begging for funds to fill this gap, I'm going to be the one to build that platform. So part of it is keeping kids safe from suicide, stopping adolescents from feeling expendable, making sure that they do have the resources that they need to be able to refer to it. And if the parents don't know how to facilitate those conversations, understanding how to introduce it on a child's level so that they can still communicate in a way that the child understands, but be very direct and understanding that it will affect them if it's gone unnoticed or unaddressed.
And if any parents or therapists want to be a part of that, they can reach out to me at info@pricelesspurposepublishing.com, and they can be added to my email list to stay in the know as to the development of that project as it's coming forward.
All right, yeah, that's great. Let me ask you, what are some things that you would say to a parent who's worried about their child having a low self-esteem, or their child being potentially bullied at school or in the neighborhood?
Oh, I would definitely tell them to reach out to a community center like your own, honestly, because the resources that you guys provide in regards to mediation, in regards to all of those things where you can teach them those tools to take into the home, they are completely valuable. If they want to get more involved on the literature piece of it,
Mhm.
then they can reach out to me at pricelesspurposepublishing.com or email me at info@pricelesspurposepublishing.com, because I can also facilitate creating that literature. If it's something where they want to include, hey, how can I put a storyline to what my child is going through so that they can understand that we can walk through this together, then that's something that I can help them facilitate as well. But they definitely need to reach out to a center like you guys is, so that they can get the tools that they need to be able to appropriately facilitate those discussions.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so if there's someone watching right now, watching this video, and they want to get involved with a campaign, and they want to learn more about what you're doing, and the goals of your company, the Priceless Purpose Publishing, how can they reach you? What can they do?
Oh, they can reach out definitely on pricelesspurposepublishing.com. They can send me a contact form, or they can just email me directly at info@pricelesspurposepublishing.com.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right. Well, I just want to say again, thank you so much for hopping on this call with me and having a conversation about bullying and self-esteem, and some things that people can do to help their families and help their kids, and ultimately help their communities. Because when people are struggling at the very bottom, that hurts everyone all the way up to the very top. So I want to thank you again, and if there's anything else you want to say before we hop off, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. I want to thank you guys for having me on your platform, because this is a really important topic that I believe sometimes get brushed under the rug. You know, people don't understand how important mental health really is in our communities, because the mental health is what drives everybody's physical well-being and safety. And it's become more relevant now in COVID times, because now it's a problem that everybody is seeing at the forefront. Mental health has definitely been something that's impacted by the dynamic of this pandemic. So I feel like it's now shined the light on a situation that's always been important, but now it's important to everybody. So I'm definitely grateful for this conversation and the invitation to have it. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And everyone watching, thank you for tuning in. On behalf of the Conflict Resolution Center in Montgomery County, we appreciate you, and don't forget to subscribe and like the video. You know, we'll be putting out plenty of workshop Wednesdays and months to come. Take care.